Government exists to protect us from each other. Where government has gone beyond its limits is in deciding to protect us from ourselves. I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He is the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be one nation gone under. Within the covers of the Bible are the answers for all the problems men face. There is no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. As government expands, liberty contracts. The most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." I have left orders to be awakened at any time during national emergency, even if I'm in a cabinet meeting. Christmas can be celebrated in the schoolroom with pine trees, tinsel and reindeers, but there must be no mention of the man whose birthday is being celebrated. One wonders how a teacher would answer if a student asked why it was called Christmas. How do you tell a communist? Well, it's someone who reads Marx and Lenin. And how do you tell an anti-communist? It's someone who understands Marx and Lenin. Live simply, love generously, care deeply, speak kindly, leave the rest to God. Republicans believe every day is the 4th of July, but the Democrats believe every day is April 15th. Sometimes when I'm faced with an atheist, I am tempted to invite him to the greatest gourmet dinner that one could ever serve, and when we have finished eating that magnificent dinner, to ask him if he believes there's a cook. You can tell a lot about a fellow's character by his way of eating jelly beans. We don't have $1 trillion debt because we haven't taxed enough, we have $1 trillion debt because we spend too much. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It is time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his action. A nation that cannot control its borders is not a nation. I know in my heart that man is good, that what is right will always eventually triumph, and there is purpose and worth to each and every life. Heroes may not be braver than anyone else. They're just braver 5 minutes longer. I've heard that hard work never killed anyone, but I say why take the chance? Status quo, you know, is Latin for the mess we're in. Government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases: if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. I hope we once again have reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts. Politics is not a bad profession. If you succeed, there are many rewards. If you disgrace yourself, you can always write a book. Some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world. But the Marines don't have that problem. It isn't so much that liberals are ignorant. It's just that they know so many things that aren't so. Recession is when your neighbor loses his job. Depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his. Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. We will always remember. We will always be proud. We will always be prepared, so we will always be free. Government is not a solution to our problem, government is the problem. It has been said that politics is the second oldest profession. I have learned that it bears a striking resemblance to the first. The future doesn't belong to the light-hearted. It belongs to the brave. Socialists ignore the side of man that is the spirit. They can provide you shelter, fill your belly with bacon and beans, treat you when you're ill, all the things guaranteed to a prisoner or a slave. They don't understand that we also dream. Our natural, inalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation from government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment. America is too great for small dreams. When you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. The federal government did not create the states created the federal government. If you analyze it, I believe the very heart and soul of conservatism is libertarianism. I think conservatism is really a misnomer, just as liberalism is a misnomer for the liberals. If we were back in the days of the revolution, so-called conservatives today would be the liberals and the liberals would be the Tories. The basis of conservatism is a desire for less government interference or less centralized authority or more individual freedom, and this is a pretty general description also of what libertarianism is. Someday, the realm of liberty and justice will encompass the planet. Freedom is not just the birthright of the few, it is the God-given right of all his children, in every country. It won't come by conquest. It will come, because freedom is right and freedom works. It will come, because cooperation and goodwill among free people will carry the day. More than a decade ago, a Supreme Court decision literally wiped off the books of 50 states' statutes protecting the rights of unborn children. Abortion on demand now takes the lives of up to 1.5 million unborn children a year. Human life legislation ending this tragedy will someday pass the Congress, and you and I must never rest until it does. Unless and until it can be proven that the unborn child is not a living entity, then its right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness must be protected. More than a decade ago, a Supreme Court decision literally wiped off the books of 50 states' statutes protecting the rights of unborn children. Abortion on demand now takes the lives of up to 1.5 million unborn children a year. Human life legislation ending this tragedy will someday pass the Congress, and you and I must never rest until it does. Unless and until it can be proven that the unborn child is not a living entity, then its right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness must be protected. Of the 4 wars in my lifetime, none came about because the U.S. was too strong. To sit back hoping that someday, someway, someone will make things right is to go on feeding the crocodile, hoping he will eat you last, but eat you he will. Of the 4 wars in my lifetime, none came about because the U.S. was too strong. To sit back hoping that someday, someway, someone will make things right is to go on feeding the crocodile, hoping he will eat you last, but eat you he will. I've never been able to understand why a Republican contributor is a fat cat and a Democratic contributor of the same amount of money is a public-spirited philanthropist. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal, or no weapon in the arsenals of the world, is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. Government does not solve problems. It subsidizes them. Thomas Jefferson once said, "We should never judge a president by his age, only by his works." And ever since he told me that, I stopped worrying. No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. Government programs, once launched, never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth. Surround yourself with great people, delegate authority, get out of the way. We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. Socialism only works in 2 places, heaven where they don't need it and hell where they already have it. Democracy is worth dying for, because it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. Life is one grand sweet song, so start the music. A hippie is someone who looks like Tarzan, walks like Jane and smells like Cheetah. Government is like a baby, an alimentary canal with a big appetite at one end and no sense of responsibility at the other. You can't tax business. Business doesn't pay taxes. It collects taxes. If we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. I've always believed that a lot of the trouble in the world would disappear if we were talking to each other instead of about each other. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem, government is the problem. From time to time we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? All of us together, in and out of government, must bear the burden. The solutions we seek must be equitable, with no one group singled out to pay a higher price. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the first step into 1,000 years of darkness. If we fail, at least let our children and our children's children say of us we justified our brief moment here. We did all that could be done. Ronald Reagan, A Time for Choosing, The Speeches of Ronald Reagan, 1961 to 1982. They tell us we must learn to live with less, and teach our children that their lives will be less full and prosperous than ours have been, that the America of the coming years will be a place where, because of our past excesses, it will be impossible to dream and make those dreams come true. I don't believe that. And, I don't believe you do either. That is why I am seeking the presidency. I cannot and will not stand by and see this great country destroy itself. Our leaders attempt to blame their failures on circumstances beyond their control, on false estimates by unknown, unidentifiable experts who rewrite modern history in an attempt to convince us our high standard of living, the result of thrift and hard work, is somehow selfish extravagance which we must renounce as we join in sharing scarcity. I don't agree that our nation must resign itself to inevitable decline, yielding its proud position to other hands. I am totally unwilling to see this country fail in its obligation to itself and to the other free peoples of the world.